I'm not. Oh, that was scary. Right. Everybody here, I think, knows you, Jane, don't they?
Yeah.
Okay, so we don't need for you to do more of a formal introduction, unless, of course, you want to. Right.
Well, I meant to start, am I?
No, it's okay. I'm just trying to mute everyone. It's a very slow process. I'm sure there was a quicker button.
There should be a mute all button, isn't it there?
You can see the unmute all button, but not the mute all button. Right, everybody muted. I think so.
Okay, but can you do two split screens so that you and I are both on it, or I mean, how do we do this?
Technology is a wonderful thing, isn't it, when you know how to use it?
Never mind.
Okay, wait a minute.
You can pin both videos.
Yeah.
So if you pin yourself as well, Rachel, I think that should do it. I'm not sure though, that's my guess.
Did it? I did a thing.
So have we got two pictures, or is
yes, I hope so. Well, I have.
No, it's not side by side.
Oh, isn't it?
No.
Oh, that's what I have.
Okay, so we'll
anyway, Jane, I'm going to spotlight you.
Okay.
Because you are in the spotlight today. Okay. Quite literally.
My 15 minutes of fame.
Well, it's going to be about 45, I think.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, so the meeting today, Jane's going to give us an insight into her life and work as a creative. She doesn't like to be termed an artist, even though I'm sure all of us here would agree that she most definitely is, but as a creative person. So we've got some questions that we've sort of spoken about beforehand. So Jane, I'm going to start by asking the question of why do you do what you do?
It's going down a bit. I'm going to read it first, and then it's easier for me, otherwise I'll go all around the house.
For sure. Okay, for sure, yeah.
Okay. At first, it was purely for pain relief as an alternative to analgesics and alcohol. A friend recommended sketching as a tool to help manage my time in rehabilitation in 1996. And I think you all know all about that. But I invited the friend today, but she hasn't got back to me, which I'm sad. I would love her to have been in this today.
Okay. For those who might listen, Jane, just briefly, what happened in 1996?
Oh, yes, of course. I was a very enthusiastic competitive horse rider, and I fractured my spine while I was trying out a young horse that I was planning to buy. And I was in a huge amount of pain. I was told I might never walk again. And I was very immobilized for quite some while. And the rehab was like a step forward, a step back, a step forward, a step back, and it just seemed to go on for years. And I used to spend about 20 hours lying down. And my active hours I had in 2 goes. Maybe I would try and manage 2 hours in the morning and then 2 hours before bedtime, so that I would try and work out a routine in my life.
Wow. So was that the first time that you really got into sketching?
No, I've sketched right from the beginning. My grandma incentivized me. She bought me a sketchbook when I was about 6 years old. And then I filled it up when I was obviously staying with her and she needed to keep me busy. And then she kept it. So I got it back when I was a teenager, when I came back to the UK. So if other people didn't save these things for me, they would have got trashed. So it's the goodwill of people like my grandma who've just kept all this stuff. And the second thing is, my sister and I were obviously arguing. I can't remember if it was Brighton or Bournemouth, who were being nasty little kids. And we just happened to be sat on this dining table in this bed and breakfast or whatever it was, with an artist. And she was such a nice lady, complete random stranger. And she taught me some drawing techniques. And I can't have been more than 6 years old. And she was teaching me how to draw animals and a human face, different ways of doing a face. And you know what? She converted me at 6 years old. I thought, wow, this is going to be my thing, because, you know, I never looked back. I was drawing everything all the time. And I was drawing in the sketchbook that Grandma gave me. And then it was very interesting for me then to look back on it as an adult. Fascinating, of, you know, that slice of my early life.
Wow, that is amazing. I I know that you've done some formal training, Jane,
Yeah.
in creativity. Would you like to share what you've done and when?
I went to Manchester to train as an art teacher. I was doing a Bachelor of Education degree, and that was my background. But I decided I didn't want to be an art teacher, so I did sociology instead, because I didn't like the art department. In actual fact, I had problems with the direction it was going in, and so then I became a teacher. And then after I fractured my spine, Jane's in this story now, aren't you? You can't see her. Jane would come and visit me, and I can't remember how we got there, but I ended up going to Jeff Kirkhouse's evening class. Oh, it was maybe an afternoon class, probably a daytime one. And I thought, oh, crumbs. You have to pay for an evening class. But at the foundation at the what was Swansea Institute was free. So I thought, well, that's a no-brainer. I'll go and do the foundation course. And I loved it. I loved every minute of it. I loved the kids. I loved the whole business. I did in 2 years what they do in 1 year. And they said I could go on and do a degree. And everyone said you should do fine art. But I said, I didn't want to do fine art because it looked heavy to me. It looked like there's a lot of materials to carry. So I thought illustration could be like pocket sized. I could be a pocket sized illustrator because I had problems carrying things. So I did the general illustration degree, and I had help from the disability person. They gave me all sorts of help, this place to park, a special chair to sit on, lots of help. You know, I've had it all the way through. So it was assisted. And so I got a first class honours degree in illustration. So I've got 2 lots of art training.
Wow, brilliant. Thank you, Jane. And it's lovely to hear how incidences collide to bring direction. In terms of direction, most artists have a theme or an avenue in art that they pursue. What theme do you pursue in your art?
Do you want me to talk about where it was and where it is now, or just where it is now?
Both or either?
Okay, well, in answer to that question, people who are listening on the recording, where it was all about me and my favourite things. And I immediately thought of The Sound of Music because of my train of thought consciousness. I think basically you could sum it up and say it was about my favourite things. And then since I had a lot of pain management to do, that wasn't going to work anymore. You know, I could try doing something favourite while I was in pain, but whatever I did, and the illustrators on the course discovered this too, that there was a very dark side to me. And I seem to get something out of all embracing the dark side and going after the rougher side that's obviously hitherto never found an expression. So I've moved on from the expressionist art, which is all about how I feel, to what I would term now the themes that I pursue, which is the same themes as fine artists. I would like to talk a bit about that, really, which is the human condition and using my sense of self as a template for exploring issues of universality. And I say that because I think it's helpful for people who are not in the art world to understand where fine artists are coming from. Shall I say it again? It's the human condition and using my sense of self as a template for exploring issues of universality. And that would explain why people use their bodies a lot. And also that progression from how I feel, which was actually a very early 20th century idea, to how we connect with other human beings and the shared experiences that we have. So that if I explore how in honesty, my deepest feelings, I find that there's other people who can connect with it. And that connection I find is valuable, something I've strived for now, that connection with other people when you touch the chord, you know.
Fantastic.
Does that make any sense?
Yes, it does. It does to me. I'm not sure about anyone else. So please feel free to come in and interject. It's, you know. Thank you, Jane.
Well, actually, can I say one more thing about fine art?
Of course.
Yes. One of the things I did at every opportunity was visit the London exhibitions and follow all the contemporary artists, because, you know, I was on the foundation course, I learnt that I wasn't going to be a past tense person. I wanted to live in the present and engage with where people are at. So if I'm doing any responding, it's to where people are now, not where our history tells us we were. And then I just thought this morning, actually, that explains why fine artists kick up about the term fine, because we don't like to be called that, because there's nothing fine about the human condition. And the word fine art comes from the Greek classical tradition, which we are rejecting. We're rejecting humanism. So we wouldn't want to go down that road anyway. Does that?
Yes. Yes, it does. It does. And I think that leads us well on to the next question. Before we look at perhaps some of the processes, what I'd like to ask you is, what does your art aim to say?
Okay, I found it. I can read it. Whatever it wants. I'm not going to be dictatorial. I don't know what it's going to say till it's done. I'm sensitive to it because I'm not aware what my subconscious is going to bring out. And it may be something that I find disturbing, but that's equally okay for me, because I want to be disturbed. I want to know what's going on inside. So here it is. It's like a discussion, and I put my two penneth into the mix and see what falls out. I love it when others can get the punchline. In the jargon, it would be called the strapline. Sorry, in the jargon of illustration, it would be called the strapline. It's great when words become redundant because the art becomes eloquent and doesn't need blurb to make sense of it. So my aim is to be eloquent, to communicate effectively with as little as possible. So there's the minimalism, which I would aspire to. You know, I don't like to be wordy, and there's nothing worse than listening to someone going on and on and on. And I don't want my art to be like that. I just want to say it, you know, without going around the bush.
Brilliant. And I think those of us who know Jane's art, and particularly those of us from Gower New Life Church, have had the privilege of it's been over 12 months probably 18 months coming up, of Jane week in, week out, sharing with us the punchline of the day's teaching. So she comes in the Sunday morning with her easel, and sometimes you often have a prepared background, don't you, Jane?
Yeah, I call it priming my paper now.
Okay. Oh, well, you see, now that's art jargon. There's me going, she comes with a paper with a bit of colour on it. And every week then encapsulates the message of what she believes the Lord is saying through what's happening within church. And it's definitely a punchline, that certainly something that we greatly value, because it speaks, it encapsulates very often in a half an hour teaching in one picture, which for us simple folk can kick off, remembering the value of the words because of what we see in the picture. So yes, it's a very powerful thing. It's a very powerful way of letting your art speak, and I love it when you say, well, to allow it to speak whatever it wants. I think that's very brave. That's what I want to say in response to that question.
I can't be dogmatic. It's not really the way to go. We are not indoctrinating. That's not what it's about. It's about, and if it's secondhand feelings, then there's absolutely no value in it. It's a cliche. So it has to be genuine. Otherwise, there's no point in doing it.
Yeah, but that's what makes it brave and unique. It's for other people, it's very easy to hide behind cliches and secondhand emotions. And the fact that you said that when art brings out a dark feeling, you don't shy away from that either. And I think these are things that really give value to the art that you produce. In terms of the art you produce, Jane, what processes do you most enjoy?
Okay. Discovering what I actually care about. Because I may, and I think the class noticed this, I would set homework from one part of my brain. I would try and do the homework through the week and have as much difficulty as everyone else, because who's this random stranger telling me what to do? I have the same problem. But if I'm letting the bit of my brain that does the work, if I let that person, that aspect of me lead, then I wouldn't end up in some cul-de-sac. So this is it. What I actually care about, by allowing my subconscious, whatever the word is, to have a voice at every stage. Recycling is more than about sustainability. It's also about me. That I've been retrieved from the scrap heap.
Because one of the things, sorry, Jane, one of the things, just to expand on that, in terms of recycling, those who haven't experienced Drawn Together, one of the things Jane encourages us is not to go out and buy artist materials, but actually to use recycle things, whether it's, your well, anything, packaging from Amazon. We had a big exciting possibility of seeing sculptures being made from Amazon packaging.
Actually, I can hijack my own train of thought now by giving you an example, if you'd like.
I would, yes.
Yeah, this one. Okay, so I'm talking about Joseph, and I think, which magazine shall I sabotage? And I thought, well, because different people come to the farm and they give us magazines. We also have some Time magazines. So I decided that I should put Joseph in Time magazine, because he's like a top guy and he's doing countrywide economics. So I sourced my Joseph. Actually, there's another picture of Joseph as well. That's a later one. That's him at the table, with a glass of something very bubbly and cool. But I just, only when I'm doing the art do I find out what, putting him in a multicolored robe, he's got a designer suit on or something. You know, he's a Marnie. No, that's why that's the rope that Daddy gave him. You know, I have to speak 21st century. So I needed to find a picture of somebody who we'd all be incredibly jealous of, or envy, or hate, you know. I needed someone who was everything we weren't. And I know, poor bloke, right? I'm really sorry that I used this poor person who's a real person, and I haven't got copyright permission, but this is like draft material for art. So when it becomes painted, if I ever get to that stage, you won't recognize him, don't worry. So for a farming agricultural theme, which obviously he goes to, he learns his skills as a livestock and grain merchant, then go to Farmers Weekly. So I need my source material from Farmers Weekly. So I'm actually using printed material to tell all my stories.
So yes.
That's it. That's my example.
Can I just add about the recycling?
Yeah.
At the very beginning, we were in actual lockdown, so shops were not open. And not everybody's au fait with online, this, that, and the other, as we are now. So Jane started off by encouraging us to use materials around our kitchen to even paint with, like coffee or tea. So that was a little fascinating start on recycling.
Yes.
Thank you. Yes.
You
know, I'm really gutted when I can't find any recycled material to use, because I have to go and do it from scratch. And to me, that's effortful. I haven't got the time. I'm too busy. And it's much quicker to cut and paste than it is. Obviously, there's another generation that cut and paste digital. Well, I've bypassed that now. I've left the course and I'm out of date. But I would have cut and pasted digital. But now I have to go back to an earlier. This is like 1950s where you cut and paste hard copy. So it's vintage, yes, in that sense.
You're making vintage current.
Lots of people are.
You talk about recycling in its relation to you. Do you want to go back to your notes, Jane, and bring it back to you?
Okay, where was I? Oh yes, here it is. The point of the recycling is that I've been recycled. So nothing of me is left out, neither my experiences nor any lost part of my life. It's about drawing myself together in the first instance. So taking random bits, assembling bits and say, oh, Joseph's story is about this, that, and the other. And you think, well, how can I join that together in the picture? That's where the magic happens, is when you suddenly see a line, a route through that. So not only do I see myself as a viable voice, but I start to see other people as recyclable. You know, it opens up for me that anybody can be salvaged, that nobody's gone too far. Their lives are redeemable. And I mean that in the most general sense of the word. So I want to be part of the solution and not part of the problem. And to achieve this more dynamic way of working, I prefer to start with chaos and find meaning through the process. By that, I'm not unusual. A lot of people start off with chaos. And one of the reasons I don't start with a white piece of paper on a Sunday is because it intimidates me. I feel safer hiding behind some flaws and some damage, you know, which is not healthy, really. One day I'll move on to centre stage and be able to work with pristine, but that's not where I'm at the minute. And a lot of illustrators saying do a few flashes and just pull it all together, and then it says what they want to say without being opinionated, you know. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, yes.
So we're saying we're in the real world. It is a little confusing, very confusing, a little chaotic. but we're trying to manage it as best we can, but we haven't arrived yet.
Yeah, I think it's a wonderful ethos, really, in terms of, you know, you
Oh,
as
I
an
mean,
artist and your life.
I got a catchphrase: where my heart is my art. Because lots of people have tried to commission me, but I'm very difficult. I'm very difficult because I can't do it to order, because I don't know what's going to happen. And I would rather now, with my time left, explore what is coming out of me rather than what someone wants to go on their wall. That's not going to work for me. So I think I have to embrace that and say, okay, maybe one day that would be nice. I'd like to be able to sell some pictures. But in the meantime, I'm going to carry on exploring what's coming out of me, because I feel like it's treasure now. I feel as though I'm accessing my own treasure.
Yeah, and I think those of us who have witnessed you in the last, well, who've been part of Drawn Together, but also part of the church, will totally agree and say that we are witnessing that treasure coming out as well. So yeah, it's very exciting for us as well. I'm sure along your journey, Jane, you've been given lots of advice, both technical, personal, whatever. What is the best piece of advice that you've received?
I could give you loads, because I'm like a sponge. I absorbed everything. I loved all my teachers and I've learnt so much. But this is some of the stuff that has continues with me. First of all, don't throw it away. Revisit it and it reveals your journey. So, I mean, one of the big things they taught us at college is you have to know where you've come from. You know, otherwise it doesn't make sense to somebody. You know, so when you're looking at an artist in history, you want to know where they've come from, their provenance. And so the work towards what other people might value, it can't just come from nowhere. It's developmental. So nothing stands on its own. It all belongs in a continuum from where you made your first anxious marks or doodles, or how do I express that? Wow, that's revelationary. How do I say it, you know, and in a way that people want to see or hear, or, you know, and that first tentative scribble becomes the most valuable bit of the equation, you know, because when you get down the road and you've done something that people say, wow, I mean, not only is it your copyright proof, but it's your journey, how long it took to get there. Because I've got a date, perhaps, and a circumstance where that got birthed. They're like, it's like conception. You're conceiving things, and they maybe get born or maybe they don't, you know. But they're there if they possibly can survive. They will carry on and evolve.
Thank you, Jane.
I can give you more. That was one. You want more?
Yes.
Okay. Responding to other people's art. So becoming part of a worldwide dialogue. There's no such thing as being too far removed from this world to be able to dialogue with it. That you don't have to be professionally trained. What you need to do is appreciate what someone's trying to say and make your own response. And one of the legitimate things that artists do while they're training is transcribe things. They're not stealing, it's not robbing other people's ideas, it's learning their techniques. So an artist could be an artist's artist, and such a person is someone who inspires other artists, not necessarily the general public. So a lot of the London exhibitions would inspire other artists, but maybe they're not really making sense to other artists, but you're getting the conceptual view of where we're all going. The other thing is, everyone has something to say. And one guy said to me, he's dead now, his name's Ozzy. He said, you can't just hide. You know, you're either in it or you're not in it. You either stand up and say it, whatever your voice is wanting to say, or you're not part of the game, you know. And I thought I used to call him the Oracle, but he was very profound. He also taught me a way of working, which he died before he fulfilled it. So I feel as though I've got a legacy there. So it's about, doesn't matter how amateurish or how confusing it is, you just have to do your best and not hide it. Being honest with yourself, and when you're trying to interrogate yourself, those were other words. I mean, I prefer investigate rather than interrogate. Interrogate, I think, is not such a nice word. But when you're investigating yourself, which is the process, you find other people can connect with you, because you find that you've got a common denominator, and it's very intimate and it's precious.
Thank you, Jane. I think there's a lot of insight in what you share. One of the things that you say that Ozzy shared with you is that, you know, not to hide. And I'm just mindful of a Sunday morning, and even last Sunday down at the beach, you weren't hiding. You were very bold in putting your easel up. For somebody like myself who can be quite self-conscious, how do you get past that not hiding, so that you just don't, you're not mindful of people watching you? And you know, you can be very accommodating, because when you were sharing with Helen and I before, you were saying, well, if people want to see, I'll be better working at this size rather than that size. So you're mindful of your audience, but you don't shy away from it. How do you get to that point?
I can tell you that when I was at secondary school, you couldn't have someone more shy. I was so scared. We used, in the sixth form, we had to take turns to read in assembly. I was so scared. I prayed about it, about how I would manage that. And I felt that it was an amazing answer to prayer. I felt really loved the fact that someone said they were doing some public speaking and they needed to practice. And would I mind if they took my slot? So I said, no, please get me on. You know, I couldn't do it. I'm too scared, too self-conscious. Now, the only reason I've changed is because I really care about it getting out there. I no longer care about myself or making a fool of myself. That is no longer my highest priority. My priority now is sharing the treasure that I believe God has given me, which is finding myself, finding my voice, and finding a lot of happiness in it.
Wonderful. That's inspirational in itself, Jane. Most of us here this morning are aware of your Christian faith, that you're a strong believer in Jesus, and that, you know, it's his Holy Spirit that inspires you to do the work, and well, not to do the work, to do what you do. And what you want is that voice to come across in your art. Can you sort of share something about how important your faith is within your journey as an artist illustrator?
Okay, I think I've tried many times to stay in, oh, I know where this is going. Yes. To stay, to do conventional. I tried really hard, but it's like I'm a square peg in a round hole. And it's almost like, what, I'm going to fail. I'm always going to fail unless I'm doing the thing that I'm meant to do. And then when I'm doing the thing I'm meant to do, I get so much joy out of it. So I'm thinking, why am I always beating myself up? What's the point? You know, life is short. Let's go cut to the chase here. And so this is, I think this, let me find where I've written it. Okay, I think this is it. I feel that I'm a go-between, you know, a person who stands in the gap, as they say metaphorically, which is 1 foot in the scriptures and 1 foot in the world. If I jump 2 feet into scriptures, I'd be no good in the world. And if I jump 2 feet into the world, I'd be no good because I'd be as lost as anyone else, yeah? So I need to be informed. So how can I best join these confusing elements where the sacred and the secular have been so abominably split apart? My goal is to expose the lie that the sacred can be sidelined. We are body and soul and spirit, and my art wants to celebrate the wholeness of our potential as human beings, to break free of all the negatives and move towards a more visionary approach, but we're not there yet. So I'm speaking with a universal voice, not just my own opinions. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And I think that's what comes across with how we witness you work as an artist, because you know, you don't come with those preconceived ideas. You shared that you don't take commissions because basically that's a dictation as to what you want to draw, and what you're sharing is that.
And can I just interrupt there? The reason, if I'm a universal human being, because I've got beyond myself, then it doesn't matter about gender, and it doesn't matter about age, and it doesn't matter about colour. None of these things matter. You know, suddenly I'm just the only person on the planet, but I've got a voice that will connect with anybody. You know, and you must treat that it's a very precious thing, isn't it?
It is, yes. It is. And
so half my pictures may be male, you know, and I love all the magazines because I get all different nationalities. So I'm anybody. Every man, that's the program, isn't it?
Yes, yes. In terms of using your voice to connect with anybody, Jane, you've spoken about it through your art, but it is something I want us to now talk a little bit about Drawn Together,
Okay.
which we've been a part of for, I don't know how long Drawn Together's been going. It's coming up 12 months. It's coming up a year, isn't it?
Inception was definitely a year ago, but
yeah.
Actual classes started maybe towards the end of September, if I remember right.
Yes. Would you like to share with us something about your perspective on the conception and development, and where you have been encouraged in the last while?
Yeah. Okay. I'm not on my own here. Things. Yeah. Looking at the Turner Prize itself, for the last year, collaboration has been the name of the game. If you look out there, you'll see artists are working together to try and come up with a shared vision. So I just feel, and I wasn't inspired by that, but I felt confirmation when I see the same things happening in the art world, that, you know, we've gone as far as we can as individuals. And actually, people are quite sick of the individualism. It's like a cult. You know, but how do we piece things together? How do we work? Like, for example, in the old monasteries, how in a scriptorium, how it was a joint effort. And it's more than about solving our bruised egos. There's something bigger than ourselves here. Am I answering the question?
Yes, you are. You are. Sorry. How did that collaboration help you to formulate something that was an idea to be what some of us have had the privilege of experiencing since September last year in Drawn Together.
Where did it birth?
Yes, how did it develop?
I've no idea, actually. I don't really know. But I suppose it must have been last spring, 2020. We were in lockdown, weren't we? That'll be it. And I'm thinking, oh, this is really sad. We're not seeing each other. We can't hug each other. And everybody was playing rainbows and looking out their windows. And my first thing was, let's talk about our visions, our views from our windows, because I thought that'd be quite fun. And in fact, my first idea was to ask people to send pictures of the view from their windows. But actually that was too hard. Thank you for all those that did. But I didn't manage to pull that together. It was the wrong side of my brain at work. So, and then I thought, well, what we're lacking here is connection, because we've all been isolated. We've all been cut off from each other. And the other equally important matter is we weren't allowed to sing. I mean, that came later when we could get together. And that was horrific to me, that's part of our voices. And at the same time, there was avian flu. And I was just thinking, what's going on here? You know, we're all being gagged and the birds are being culled. You know, so much is going on. There's something big happening. And I thought, we need each other. We need to do the very best we can to stay connected to each other, no matter how hard it is. And so it was like, how do we do that? So it doesn't start from a piece of artwork. The artwork might emerge from that. And I was hoping it would be some sort of corporate effort. And maybe that's still to do. We're unfinished business.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jane. And I think we are unfinished business in terms of where you're leading us in Drawn Together. So do you want to share something about the journey of Drawn Together since we started?
The person to do it. Or do you want to say what the syllabus was?
Yes.
Okay, I can do that. So I did pray about how I would approach each term, and we only meet on school days. And the first term I thought, okay, what's the zeitgeist was the rainbows. So I thought, well, everybody's playing at the rainbow. I have to do the rainbow. So it was the easiest handle to hang stuff on. So first week was red, next week orange, next week yellow. And we just looked at the colours. We kept it really basic. And it could be whatever you liked in those colours. And it didn't even have to be painted. It could be a tray of red objects, as Helen did. Was it you? Yeah, it was you, wasn't it? Strawberries. No, I'm getting muddled up. Who did what?
Actually, no, the first week we were doing red, I think you asked us to do red things in the background. Do you remember? And I'd kind of overlooked that. So I kind of panicked and I just grabbed up a bunch of dried roses that my husband had bought me because it was something special. I just dumped that in there. Yeah. And I remember Rachel had a beautiful scene and she said she'd had a lot of benefit and sort of mindfulness really from doing that. And then we painted in red. But I wrote a poem about the colour red because somebody in the group said, red's not my colour. I thought, yes, it is. So I did a little poem about that. Do you remember?
We should. I don't know, we haven't got time probably today, but we have to revisit that. That was good because we've got some nuggets there to go back and investigate further, haven't we, from last year?
We could actually try and everybody do a different medium on the same topic, I suppose.
Yeah, well, but it's all to be explored, isn't it?
Yeah.
So we did the rainbow and then we did the virtual gallery. And if you do look at the virtual gallery, it's our colours in rainbow sequence. So not going on, it was just playful. That was the important thing. It had to be fun.
Thank you, Jane. And it certainly was fun for those of us who enjoyed it. So we went from there. Where did you take us then?
So after Christmas, I'm thinking, now how do we follow that? That was very successful. What should we do next? And I thought, okay, I know what everyone's talking about. We're all talking about our stories. Let's do our stories. But unfortunately, I go too deep I go into the deep water very quickly, and I shouldn't do that. So especially if I've got beginner swimmers here, you know. So we had to keep it very simple. So we ended up with a before, a now, and an after. So basically the narrative element of picture making. And even if you ended up with one picture, it could have a life that is happening before the picture's being told, and it's looking forward to something that hasn't happened yet. So that element of time passing and something is in the middle, really. I think that sums it up, doesn't it?
Yes, yes.
And then by half term, I realized that that's gone as far as we can go. And so I thought we'd better put some text into our stories, because text could be really handy if we've got mixed messages to try and close down the message. And I've got an example actually, which I thought might be useful. Yeah, yes. Got to hide some of it. So here's an example. I use, oops, I've got two books. So this was an example of using the rubbish from leftover after you've done some cutting to make a word, which I wrote the word colour. And I said, what does that mean to you? And then I said, but what about in this context, which is, oops, can you see it? Which is when the Black Lives Matter started. So I thought, well, if I want to say something into that wound that humanity is experiencing, I'd like to say that racism is a symptom rather than, you know, an end thing that you have to stamp out. It's a symptom of something else. That's it. I just left it at that. Racism is a symptom. But by that I'm saying colour, which is what we've done in the previous term, is a difficult one for us. We've got ourselves into such a muddle over it all.
Thank you, Jane. So from there we did
Text. We did text.
Yes.
To show that you can put a word up there and it can integrate with whatever else is in the picture to close down the meaning for it to be the meaning you want people to read. It's useful to have open-ended reading, but it's also useful if you want to have your own voice for people to hear what you're saying and not put their own interpretation on it, which could be completely wrong as far as you're concerned. So then from that, we went to, well, we've done text. Let's go sideways now and look at a subject like artists might look at. And we did observation and spending time with creatures, because we were allowed to go out after Easter. So we could go into parks and sit on a bench and just observe life and try not to interrupt it, but just to see what is there that we can get from it, just watching birds and pets. And that was really hard. It was really hard because I don't like copying myself. I find it time consuming and frustrating, but just observing some movement is very difficult. Actually, Eleanor was really eloquent at doing movement side, which is not surprising, is it? Whatever our gifts are, that bit we find easy. So it translated into the visual form as well.
Yes, for those who don't know, Eleanor is a dancer.
A dance teacher, yeah.
Yes, a dance teacher.
Yeah.
And from looking at animals, which was challenging for many of us, you then thought, well, I'll give them something easier. And in doing so, you challenged yourself, Jane.
Yes.
And put yourself outside your own comfort zone. So what was the final sort of...
Well, I knew everybody liked flowers, and it was like coming up to late spring, and all the and everyone was out in their gardens, and flower gardens are really important to everybody. So we did flowers, and that was really hard for me because I've always avoided doing flowers.
And I think that's just wonderful to have you as our teacher, leader, facilitator in the art, is because you don't choose topics because you're on your hobby horse. From what you've just shared, and to summarize, really, you always chose topics that were current, relevant, whether and also whether they were appealing to you personally or not.
Yeah.
And in terms of that, we've spoken a little about Drawn Together. What I want us to look at finally is, what are your goals as a artist illustrator? Where do you want to go?
Okay, I'll read this to you. To share the resource that this has become to me, its treasure that I can't keep to myself. I especially want to share this way of working with kids. Yes, you can relive events and let your grown-up self calm the anxious child within, but it's so much more than this. So I don't like my art to be put into a box and categorized as prophetic art or art therapy or anything, because I've no idea which way it's going to go. I don't know either. I consider art as an investigative tool, problem solving, if you like. I'm exploring how we can work collaboratively. Together we are more than the sum of our parts, about learning to forgive and trust each other as much as we are able, and move forward to encourage and support one another in whichever direction our creativity takes us. Also to fill in what our state education left out when routing was replaced with maths, i.e. the 3 R's, reading, writing and arithmetic. Arithmetic doesn't begin with an R, neither does writing for that matter. So how ignorant were they?
Yes, sorry, Jane. It's one of the things we love about you, because you don't hold back, and you're not afraid to say what you think. Yes, so yeah, you have another section to read.
Okay. So where do we get? To convince people this is nothing to do with calling yourself an artist or having a skill with drawing. Like writing, you just do it. Same with my art. As long as you can read your work, then the message is sent. Evaluation is based on its readability, not public acclaim. The art for me is about speaking the truth in love, and mixed messages can also be very revealing. And I'm looking at my own mixed messages because that's what discloses the bits that I've hidden from myself.
Thank you, Jane. Before I ask anybody's got any questions, there's one final thing that's just come to mind. I asked you earlier, what's the best piece of advice you have received?
I already did that. Yeah.
Yeah, I know you've already done it. What I'd like to ask you now is, what is the best piece of advice that you could give?
Okay. Join the class in September.
Shameless plug. I didn't expect that, Jane. I didn't expect that. One of the best pieces of advice that I've received from Jane, a couple of things really, is, as she'd said, just do it. You don't need to be an artist
That's
to
not
create.
me, that was Christine. I think it was Christine. Christine, did you say that? Or was it Eleanor? I can't remember who said it.
Well, your life says it, Jane. Your life.
What was amazing about that was, we are more than the sum of our parts. What we've created between us is a corporate effort. We may not have done much art, but that's secondary, you know, to what we're doing with our lives.
And I think that's another piece of advice that you give us in terms of leading us to Drawn Together, that art is actually secondary to the process, that the process and life is primary. And that's a very precious thing to learn from a creative, because in the more traditional educational system, it's often taught that the end product is everything. And you're striving to reach the end product, and you know, life feels like it, doesn't it? We're in a world that strives to have the best end product in work life, family life, home life. Got to have the best home, the best car, the best job. And one ethos that you are very strong with, Jane, is that it's actually the process is probably more important than the end product. And for me personally, that encourages me in life. So I just want to thank you for that, for gifting me that, for taking the emphasis off the end product, off the artist and off the illustrator, to focus on how the process of creativity itself can be powerful, can be insightful, and can be something of greater worth than even putting something on your wall. You know, it's actually how it gets there is the most important. What I'd like to do, our time is virtually up, but I want to give a couple of minutes if anybody has got any questions for Jane.
Have you unmuted everyone?
I've asked everyone to unmute.
Yeah.
Well, I haven't got any questions, but I just have to say I have found this morning just simply amazing. Yeah, I've just got so much from it, and it's really helped me to understand more, Jane, what you do. You know, I can only speak for myself, but personally, I'm not in Drawn Together, but on a Sunday, what you do and what you share with me personally, I get so much from it. It is just so unique. And I think the one thing for me, it just speaks volumes. And my experience has been it actually says different things. It can say different things to different people because it taps into who they are and things about their life and about their faith and about their beliefs.
Yes.
It's just so powerful and very, very precious, and it adds so much to my life. I'd like to thank you for that.
Jane, not Jane, Mary, I can see that you're speaking, and I muted you when Linda was speaking because there was a bit of feedback.
Okay. No, I just agree with what Linda has said. I mean, you know, just what Jane produces on a Sunday, the message in it is absolutely spot on. It's just amazing how she can, you know, how she can do it. I don't know. I mean, it's absolutely brilliant, Jane. And I love it, and I know others do too.
But I'm always thinking it's not me, you see. I am more inspired when I'm in a group setting. When I'm on my own, it's easy to get sidetracked, but you guys keep me on task, you know.
Well, you're exceptional. I have to say that.
Thank you.
I think the difference with Jane and other arty people, shall I put it that way, is that she does not call herself an artist. And by that, she means that the end product is the byproduct and the process is everything. And that's what I appreciate. I've known Jane some years now, but I'm discovering more of Jane through the Drawn Together than ever before. You know, it's her life on a page, and it's encouraging me that although I'm not the end product, the journey of life is everything, and that it doesn't matter what it looks like. It's there, it's evolving, and that's what I found so precious.
Yeah, and it's your way of saying it, like if you're sort of constrained by your cultural sort of like what people expect, you know, and you have to go through the motions of everything. Your art is your liberating place where you can say, this is the real me. and I'm very naughty, you know, and you can actually be quite rude as well. You know, there's all sorts of ways of just letting it all hang out. But it's like, it's part of you being honest so that people don't have a filtered view of you.
I think to add to what we've shared about, I like what you said, Helen, that the end product being the byproduct. That's what Jane says. But what is wonderful about this ethos is that actually the end product, when you go through the process and value the process, is actually more precious to put on the wall. So we're not dissing artists and art to go on the wall, but we're actually trying to elevate, and Jane's trying to elevate and give voice to the process that has caused the person, be it herself or anyone else, to create something that looks beautiful on their wall, because there's a backstory, and it's processing that backstory, understanding that backstory as a observer, as a viewer of a piece of art, relating to something in the backstory of that piece of art that gives that art value. And it can be pretty and beautiful to look at, but it's the backstory that makes it even more precious to the owner. So it's just to bring that balance, that we don't want to diss pretty art and beautiful art, because we all have it in our rooms and in our homes. It makes them look nice and we enjoy them. But when there's a backstory, every time you look at it, there's something, you know, there's a memory attached, there's a process attached that makes it even more precious.
Like, if I could do a pretty piece of work, don't you think I would? I would. The reason that my work wasn't pretty is because it's come out of pain. It was birthed out of pain. And I can give you many examples, and Van Gogh being one of them. Those sunflowers are traumatized. You know, you can't do pretty art when you're suffering, but what you can do is, there can be some gems in it. Like, I love Van Gogh's work. I love the way you look at the two color planes, and he's got a singing turquoise between the yellow and whatever's next. It's just exquisite. But he got there through his suffering by letting his art inform his practice. And if he'd had antidepressants and all sorts of other drugs available to him, we wouldn't have that art. So I totally appreciate and value and learn so much from the art of the past. But I can see what it's come, as you exactly said, Rachel, it's where it's come from that's amazing. Don't like just turn him into an object and look at his work as a pleasing piece of connoisseurial appropriation. It's a life that is hung up there.
Thank you, Jane, and thank you for being the subject and the object of our meeting today, and thank you for being prepared to be spotlighted, and that we can pin you on our computer screens this morning to share a bit of insight about who you are, about what drives you. And personally, I've been really blessed and very encouraged. And again, you know, it just, as Linda has shared, it helps us to understand more. So thank you for allowing me to advertise Meet the Artist Illustrator, even though you hate calling yourself that. Thank you, ladies, every one of you, for joining in, for joining us this morning, and also supporting Jane and acknowledging Jane in giving her a foundation, because we want to see her develop more, to share more the treasures that she's got inside of her, because those of us who have had the privilege of tapping into those treasures in Drawn Together, we just want to say, guys, just come along, because it's amazing. You're not an artist, well, actually you'll fit right in. And if you are an artist and you are very talented, because we've got everything she does is incredibly beautiful, yeah, you'll fit right in. So as Jane has said, just turn up, little plug now for Drawn Together. We are taking a break for the summer, but we will be restarting in September. But it's wonderful always. The most inspiring is to see the person behind the art. And in Jane's case, not only the person behind the art, but the person of Jesus behind Jane, to hear her story from pain to present. It's very powerful. So thank you for sharing your story. Thank you everyone for being on this journey with us, and even this morning for this past hour or so being with us. It's been a blessing. And yes, I think we have come to the end of our time, but we look forward to next time. And yeah, bless you all. And I know Jane wants to look at the recording before it goes out. I'm not sure we will make it public, but if you'd like a copy, or you know somebody that would benefit from the recording, then let me know. But Jane will have first sort of kudos on that. Okay, thank you so much, ladies. Enjoy your day. Please stay cool, stay hydrated,
Yes.
and yes, stay safe.
Yeah. Priscilla, we'll be in touch for our next lunch appointment.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
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 Bless you all.
Bye.